Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. I call to order the meeting of the Manassas Park Governing Body for June 6, 2023. First, we have approval of our agenda. We have an amended agenda, actually. First, we will add the Pledge of Allegiance and moment of silence to the agenda, and let's make that 1.5 so we don't have to renumber everything. The next change is that we will move 9E, the school board appointment. It will become 8A under unfinished business. Also, we will add DSS attorney engagement agreement as 9G, which is, I think we have a copy here at our places. So are there any other changes or additions to the agenda? Okay. Then do we have a motion to approve?
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have Pledge of Allegiance, and Councilmember Javed, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Next is public comment time. We have one individual signed up, Mr. Tyler Regula. Would you come to the microphone, state your name and address, limit yourself to 3 minutes, and Ms. Connor will be the timekeeper. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, Tyler Regula, 281 Mosby Drive. Today I would like to talk about speeding. I know it's been ongoing. Many people have heard it. Particular area is going to be Mosby Drive and Cabell. That has turned into basically a drag strip at this point.
Okay, hang on just a second. Yep. Sarah, is that microphone turned on by any chance?
Is this better?
I think it's on.
Hello, hello? It is on. Yeah.
It is. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay.
Yeah, so Mosby Drive and Cabell has been just constant speeding lately. And my main concern is that intersection there is a school bus pickup area. It's pretty heavily populated when the school bus comes by. I know we've talked about adding speed bumps to roads, floated different ideas. It's just a matter of time until somebody gets hit. That area in particular should be focused on, in my opinion, and I'm hoping we can get something done soon. That's all I have today.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who is not signed up but who would still like to make public comment? Seeing no one and hearing no one, we will move on. We have 3 public hearings. Our first public hearing is FY24 taxes and fees.
Do you want me to, I have one presentation for both public hearings. Do you want me to do the presentation right now or during the budget public hearing?
Okay, when would it be most helpful?
It's up to you all and your preference.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the wishes of the governing body?
Do we have to make any type of special motions since it's one covering 2 subjects?
They're each separate public hearings, so you would open and close each of them.
Okay.
Yeah, but whether you want a staff,
Part, like
yeah,
you
it's just
stop.
one staff presentation for both, but it's your preference when you want me to do.
Well, let's do it now.
Okay. All right. All right, good evening, Mayor, members of the governing body. Tonight I'm going to go over really the major changes that occurred in the budget since my presentation in the first meeting in April. If residents want to get more information, I'd urge them to watch that meeting. There I presented the entire budget. Tonight I'm just going to really focus on what changes have occurred since that presentation. So the updated highlights in terms of tax rates. The tax rate reduction now is 2 cents. That's equivalent to about $469,000 in tax relief to residents compared to the current rate if that held steady. That was on top of last year's. You can see how big of a tax rate reduction we did last year. And since 2021, the spring of 2021, you've reduced rates by 12 cents, which is pretty significant growth, and I'll show you what that looks like on a later slide. The revenue increases in FY24 are actually less than inflation now with the additional decrease in tax rates that you've done. And then for employees, the new COLA adjustment also just under inflation is at 6%. That's at a cost to the city of about $1 million, and that should at least keep us afloat with what everyone else is doing in the region. So last year we tried to catch up with everyone's salaries. We're not there yet, but at least we're not going to fall further behind this year because of this 6%. There's a lot of variation across jurisdictions and even within specific fields. So there are some jurisdictions that are doing more robust than this, but there's others that are doing like a 5 to 6%. So we're kind of keeping steady, I think, with the other jurisdictions when it comes to growth this year. So that's helpful in the future years when we try to close the market gap. And then operational excellence, really the two major changes that occurred since the original budget was the addition of the social services customer service rep, and then for police, the property and evidence manager. No real change to the CIP. And then for reserves, not as much invested in reserves, but still a strong position maintained, and I'll show you what that looks like. So in terms of the overall budget, again, the big changes, you can see we're going to have now slightly less revenues in property taxes compared to the budget that I presented, but still an increase from FY23. So the increase is about 6.13% compared to the inflation of 6.6%. That was offset because we went ahead and plugged in the 7% pay increases for DSS, which then brought in the additional revenue from the state. That was your option. If you didn't do a 7%, you didn't get the revenues from the state. If you did the 7%, then you got the revenues from the state. So that helped essentially fund that change in budget. And then you can see all of these line items went up slightly because of the change from 4.4% pay raise to a 6% pay raise. I added this just to be helpful of what our actual operating budget looks like when you take out capital and debt and reserve contributions, what we're actually spending from an operating capacity standpoint, and kind of what the annual surpluses are from that then go towards paying down debt, capital, and reserves. And you can see the major changes from an operational standpoint are going to be in public safety, but a majority of the driver of this is actually grants, right? The biggest one being at the fire department, where we got the $3 million grant for the additional 15 firefighters. So that's the majority of that actual increase. The other increases, what the increases represent are that 6% pay raise increase across all these employees in the department. So the tax cut plan, this is what the curve has looked like over the last few years, and right now a very conservative approach going forward in terms of reductions, but we've been beating our model. So in FY19, when we were dealing with the debt spike and the fiscal crisis, at that time, we still set up a plan to reduce tax rates, knowing that we had the highest tax rate in Virginia. We wanted to get it down. So overcoming all those things, we knew that in FY23, we can start reducing the tax rate. So this was the plan that we had, and this is what we've actually been doing. So we've been much more aggressive in our tax rate reductions, and I hope through development we can keep that curve going this way versus the current curve, the planned curve that we previously had. So a lot more tax rate reductions than proposed, and then again a potential to decrease this even faster with more economic development. For reserves, so in my original budget presentation, we achieved our targets. We decided to reinvest in some of those reserve spending on tax rate reductions, right? Because more tax rate reductions this year impact future years. Same thing with pay raises. A bigger pay raise this year impacts future years. Additional FTEs this year, assuming they get kept, impact future years. So with all the changes made in the model this year, you can see what the gap is going to be for reserves. But again, the big thing is we've been ending every fiscal year with much larger surpluses than planned, which means I think we will get to our target by 2030. And this is just a more conservative estimate of where we're headed. But we're doing deeper tax rate reductions than planned and bigger pay raise increases than planned, we're also doing more contributions every year to reserves than planned. So we're budgeting very conservatively here. For water and sewer, there's no change to the actual budget since what I presented in terms of rates here. Forgot to mention for the general fund, no other real rate changes. So the personal property tax rate proposed to remain the same at $3 per $100 of assessed value. That's still the lowest in all of Northern Virginia. For the water and sewer rate, proposing an increase of 2.5%. As a reminder, we went almost a decade without any increases, and we've been getting hit pretty badly with inflation. So the 2.5% rate adjustment is less than inflationary impacts over the last few years. No changes also to the stormwater. Here you see the 11% increase, and that really has to do with the stream restoration projects, and just you'll see at a later slide kind of where all these funds are in terms of health, and trying to balance those funds, achieve the EPA mandated project load without being too much of a burden. We do have a congressionally directed spending funding project that's still outstanding that Congresswoman Wexton's pushing pretty aggressively for us. That gets approved, expect this curve to look more like this, and in the future years we should see even further decreases as well in those rates if we're able to get additional federal funding for some of these projects. But again, the rate increase average continues to drop each year as we find other ways to fund these expensive projects. And then solid waste, this did have a slight change, not in the rate. The rate remains 8%, and you'll see, again, from a fund perspective, this fund balance is still in a negative position, and we're trying to get it out of a negative position, but we don't want to do it overnight. So it's kind of adjustments to get to kind of the market realities of solid waste. Arlington just had a massive increase because they also had to renegotiate their contract, and the bids just came back a lot higher as well. That's just the reality now of solid waste collection, unfortunately. The big change, though, from my budget presentation was a decision to go with the 2 recycling dumpsters in the city, one on each side, versus the purchasing of larger totes for each resident. And this was identified as a better solution. This is for cardboard recycling specifically. We already added glass recycling a couple years ago, or a year ago. I'm sorry. You can see with the solid waste rate, again, the plan is to slowly get that down in terms of the increases. And I'll show you from a fund balance standpoint why we're doing this. Our fund balance is already negative for solid waste. It's projected to get to negative for stormwater as we pursue these EPA mandated projects. Healthy for the water and sewer fund. We do spend it down in negative just from a capital standpoint, but it does quickly rebound. But essentially, these enterprise funds are going to be floated by the general fund over the next few years in terms of a cash position, not necessarily a fund position, with the exception of solid waste and stormwater. But in order to keep a solid cash position, you'll see it's actually going down despite the rate increases because of the additional capital spending that we have to do on the water and sewer side and also the stormwater side. But we try to keep it at a level that's not too dangerous right now. So we're doing kind of the bare minimum of what's actually needed in terms of rate increases. And again, as a reminder, most of our costs for water and sewer are fixed. Right, what we get billed by UOSA for sewer treatment that we don't do here, what we pay for water from Prince William County, ultimately Fairfax County, who sells it to Prince William County, who sells it to us, and the city of Manassas, and then stormwater based off of the TMDL reduction goals, and then this by the market, really. What does it cost from a market perspective to get a solid waste contract for collection? Doing so in-house would be a lot more expensive. If contract prices continue to go up, that's something we can reevaluate in the future if going in-house would actually be cheaper. But I do believe that contracted solid waste is always going to be cheaper than going in-house. In terms of next steps, we've knocked out pretty much every step of the budget. Tonight we're doing the public hearing, and then you're able to vote on the budget no sooner than 2 weeks from tonight, and then no later than Friday, June 30th. And then in terms of the key decision points that you all had, here's kind of the synopsis, right? You went to a bigger tax rate reduction than what I proposed, bigger pay raise as well, and then the 2 additional FTEs from what was proposed, no change to the CIP, and then the decision of the dumpster rentals versus the buying the receptacle. So that's kind of the key highlights for residents who've been following since my presentation of kind of what's gone on with rates and the actual budget expenditures. Are there any questions?
Okay, thank you, Laszlo. Comments or questions?
Really quick.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, how are we regarding our real estate tax rate? How are we now compared to the rest of the area?
Still not good. Yeah, everyone else is also still far below where we are. And even though the towns are kind of holding steady, Fairfax County's still able to continue to reduce tax rates as well. So at least I think we're keeping up in terms of those decreases with the towns in Fairfax County, but we're still higher than they are. And it's going to take some robust economic development to really get that tax rate down.
Okay, yeah, right, because right now that's our primary stream of revenue.
It is, yeah. Unfortunately, you can see from the earlier table, that's the majority of our revenue. So to decrease tax revenues would result in having to cut dramatically something else in the city, and we're already the lowest FTE count in all the entire region, and we're also the lowest paid in terms of staff across the region. So we don't necessarily have a spending problem, we have a revenue problem, and that has to be addressed through economic development.
Thank you.
Follow-up? No. Do you have a comment, question? Comments, or yes, ma'am?
I have two questions. First, what is the plan for informing the residents about the recycling rentals, the big bins?
Yeah, once we get them up, we'll push it out on social media for people to see where to drop it off.
And then I know we were not able to add traffic enforcement this budget cycle, but will the SROs be able to help maybe over the summer a bit with some traffic?
Yeah, I think when school is out, that's going to be their priority, is getting them on traffic enforcement.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thanks.
But again, the rest of the department is still shorter staff, so they kind of have to help cover for those items as well. But we'll try to focus them on traffic enforcement as well.
Okay.
Councilmember Javed?
I guess the vehicle assessments, you projected almost 20% decrease in FY '25?
In FY '24.
I mean, 24,
Yeah,
sorry, yeah.
yeah. That's factored into the budget as well. We've also added vehicles as well, so through two ways, right? So we're growing as a city, we're adding new people to the city, and also through parking enforcement of the decal as well. That's brought on additional vehicles to the roll. So even though we're seeing that decrease in assessments, we're still going to have a slight increase in revenue based off of having new residents, and that allows us to keep that low tax rate.
And that's good. I mean, it'll save money for our residents, but what I was concerned about is the huge drop percentage, 20%. So the year prior, it wasn't assessed properly, or what?
Yeah,
now they're
no.
assessed-
And we'll see if that 20% holds or not, right? That's what we're hurt. That's for used cars, not for new car
Yeah, right,
sales,
used cars, yep.
So we saw a 25% increase the year before. That's why we dropped the rate pretty dramatically last year, because we saw that increase in assessment. Even though we're seeing it go, the prices slightly going back, we wanted to be able to still keep that rate, and the way we've been able to do it is just adding additional customers. That's been the strategy. That allows us to keep that lower rate. But we'll see if that 20% still bears out. And that had to do with more of the supply chain issues that restricted the supply of new cars and people buying used cars, and just overall inflation causing, with more demand for used cars, the prices of used cars going up. The supply has rebounded for newer cars, and so you're seeing apparently in the market the decrease but we haven't received our assessment data yet for this next year, so we'll see if we'll actually
But we
get
won't
that
see the flip, like we won't see an increase.
increase. Oh, the following year?
Right.
I don't know. I
'Cause,
can't.
if it's
yeah.
25 increase last year, then dropped 20%, and now we're going to see an increase the following year.
I don't know. It's hard for me to predict. I'm not sure what's going to happen with inflation, and I mean, the Fed keeps increasing that rate to try to control inflation. But I'm not sure if the assessments go up again dramatically, we'll have the opportunity to reduce that rate again.
Yeah. And we reduced it last year,
Yeah, we did.
not
yeah.
this year. Right?
Yep.
$3.25?
$3 flat.
$3.
Yeah.
That's it.
Follow-up?
No, not at this time.
Okay. Anyone? Okay. Is there anyone who would like to make public comment on the FY '24 taxes and fees? Okay, seeing no one and hearing no one, do we have a motion to close?
Moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have the second public hearing, which is FY '24 budget. We have just seen the presentation, so I declare the public hearing open. So let's go into governing body questions or comments. No?
No.
I just asked that question.
Okay. Is there anyone who would like to make public comment in the audience regarding the FY24 budget? Okay, seeing no one and hearing no one, do we have a motion to close?
Moved.
Did we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. Our third public hearing is the topic of the public hearing is the sale of city-owned property, parcel 1A-2 Belmont Reserve. I declare the public hearing open.
Good evening again, Mayor and members of the governing body. So tonight, we're talking about the sale of that property, but I want to provide context in terms of why we're selling that land. What objectives are we trying to accomplish? Since you can argue 2016, the city's really changed its approach to how we do any development, right? We really first lay out what our objectives are as a city before we permit any development to occur, how it's advancing our ability to reduce tax rates, fund capital liabilities without passing that burden on to our residents. This is another such example of that project. So as a reminder, in 2019, I did multiple town halls where I was talking about the downtown and what was the rationale for the downtown. And one of the rationales was the city hall. And what we've known as a city for the longest time is that old city hall building, which no longer is up, was a liability on residents because it was an older building, never designed for office. The time had come for major renovations, overhaul, or a new building, which is going to be very expensive. And the same thing with Public Works, which is an even older building and still has yet to be replaced, right? So we had a lot of unfunded capital liabilities. So the options were charge that to current taxpayers, which means either higher tax rates or inability to do the tax rate reductions that we've been doing over the last few years. Those were our options, but we decided to lay out our goals in terms of development to help us accomplish these objectives, along with growing the tax base to do deeper tax rate reductions as well in the future and help fund the salary increases and FTE growth that we've been looking for. So it paid off for the new city hall. You can see this is the table just summarizing the revenues generated by the rezoning of that land from industrial to mixed-use development, and the collection of tax revenues from that, and the development of the Stanley Martin 2/2 condos, what that's been bringing in for revenues. And then this is the column showing the payments that we're making, the lease purchase payments we're making for this building to replace the older city hall. So you can see it right off the bat, we started making profits. And going forward, we continue to make profits through FY30. We're going to be about $7.6 million in profits from that transaction. We always forecasted profits with the deal. I forecasted very conservatively. The amount is actually much higher, and that's because those houses are selling at a lot higher rate than what we forecasted back in 2019, 2020 when we had planned this. So this was successful. We funded an unfunded capital liability without impacting current taxpayers, and we made a profit out of it. And that's going to be our ongoing goal as well with anything we do. In the 2019 downtown town hall, I also talked about what the fiscal impacts look like. I talked about the types of housing supply, rentals for apartments, what the fiscal impact is from a deep analysis of revenues brought in and then the expenditures associated with it. But I also made the point that we don't necessarily always spend the revenues brought in based off of the impact of that growth, right? We had seen some additional residential development since this time, but the impact on the schools didn't happen because the whole school-age population was actually declining at that time. So fiscal impact analysis is a useful tool just to determine kind of what types of residential impacts will have a greater fiscal impact, but we've actually achieved greater profits than what we even estimated here because of the changing demographics of school-age population as well. But at this time, I kind of showed what the positive impacts were. I also made the point at that time that those additional increases really from getting the Palisades and the Artena apartments is what enabled us to deal with that debt spike, that $1.5 million increase. Had we not done that development, we would have really struggled at that point to pay for that because we added a new tax base as part of that transaction. So not every development is bad. That's the point. There's goals. Developments can help cities accomplish our objectives and help out our residents as well. Other unfunded capital liabilities that I didn't talk about at that town hall, but that have arisen from our schools is their need for the new a new transportation facility for their transportation team. Think about all their school buses and the maintenance and everything associated with their transportation staffing. And the same thing for their facility team as well, for all the facility maintenance they do at our 4 school campuses. So that's another unfunded liability. So our goal was to come up with solutions, since they're kind of all quasi-industrial in nature in terms of public works, the schools' transportation, schools' facility maintenance, our general services, staff on the ground, was to buy a building, right, versus construction of a new building, to buy an existing building that would house both of these departments, and to do that without impacting current taxpayers. Again, the same strategy we took for City Hall. So we looked at really acquiring an existing facility, and then once we moved out this facility and transportation staff from schools, hopefully have some money available to help the schools with retrofitting their facilities where they are right now for the purposes of vocational and technical training for our high schoolers, because that's not an option right now, and we know that not everyone goes to college, and there needs to be other types of education that our schools provide. And then for Public Works is to continue to redevelop that area around Kent Village Square. That's a successful retail shopping center. It's a localized shopping center for that area of our city and the surrounding parts just outside there, so there's room for growth there. So we'll look for some commercial enhancements as part of moving Public Works out of that area into this building and redeveloping that for additional commercial opportunities to continue to improve the tax base. And then the goal was to generate revenue by doing a development adjacent to that building that we're currently in negotiations for acquisition. Adjacent to that, right on Digital Drive and Manassas Drive, that intersection there, to generate the revenues to go ahead and buy that building, pay for renovations for that building, pay for long-term maintenance of that building so it's not falling on current taxpayers, and also hopefully have some additional funding for helping the schools with any retrofitting of their facilities for additional educational opportunities. So as part of that, though, so you can see that as part of that development, right, there's 3 parcels. 2 are privately owned and 1 is publicly owned. We own this parcel here, so not only will we generate revenue from the development itself, but also from the sale of that land, and that's what we're talking about tonight from a public hearing standpoint, is the selling of that land. But I need to provide context for why we're looking to sell that land and for what purpose. So we're partnering with a company called D.R. Horton. They're one of the largest builders in our country. You can see their entire portfolio. They do have a representative here this evening that we've been working with over the last year and a half now to plan this. So he's here to answer any questions you may have about their company as well and what they do. But the specifically for our city, what we're proposing to do is to build additional 2-over-2s like we're doing behind City Hall here, but a rental product. As part of that, we'll get the land sale that I talked about in that previous slide, the $1 million. Plus, right now, they're looking to proffer cash for based off of prior historical proffer cash payments as well. And they've also offered to designate 5% of these as affordable units as we start to move into that phase of our development of trying to help with housing affordability in our region as well. And this is kind of what the overview of the plan looks like. This is the intersection of Digital Drive and Manassas Drive. So down here is Belmont Reserve. Those are townhouses. So we transition townhouses to condos to garden-style apartments. So you have a transition as you get closer to the downtown. And you can see the lower level units are looking at 3 bedrooms and the upper level units at 4 bedrooms. So it's a different portfolio of rental options that we currently don't have right now. There's not a lot of rental opportunities for 3 bedrooms. There's none for 4 bedrooms. So it provides options for growing families who still are not ready or unwilling to own. They'll have now rental options to accommodate them. And this is a concept that they had been developing, kind of initial drawings from another 2-over-2 concept that they had that they're looking to apply in our city here, but we're still in the infancy. You'll see more elevations as we get to rezoning, but for right now, really the discussion is the sale of this specific land to enable this development to occur. In terms of the budget breakdown, so we're forecasting right now that the cost all in to buy the building for the community development department and for those school departments is going to be about $6.1 million. This table just shows you kind of the projected revenues over the next 3 years if you approve this purchase to sale agreement and they go through rezoning and site planning, kind of what the year 1 real estate tax revenue would be, the proffer cash, the tap fees, right, for water and sewer connections, bringing those on board as well. The lease revenues from the existing businesses there as well for those 3 years. Generate about $5.63 million. You add the land sale value of about $1 million, so we have the money within the next 3 years to go ahead and acquire, right? You're making a slight profit of about $400,000 or $500,000 as part of that transaction. But equally importantly, probably more importantly, in the long run as well, you got to look at the real estate tax revenues in the long run, what those are estimated at. Also personal property taxes. We talked about that earlier tonight when our ability to keep that personal property tax rate low has been because of adding more residents, right, who are paying, who are bringing their cars and paying that tax, and also through enforcement as well. So this generates additional revenue for us. But this is what's kind of available after purchasing of the building. What we would have available for that building's going to definitely need some renovations to make it work from an office perspective, right? But also we talked about other renovations as well for our school. So you'll have that pot of money now to play with, to plan over the next decade for how to accommodate or to deal with some of the the remaining facility liabilities that we have now. Now, not to say that there won't be any facility liabilities. We know the fire station was not built to the requirements of what it should be built, but urgently right now, it's Public Works who doesn't have a usable building. The Development Services Division of Community Development, which is over at Bloom's, which was never really designed to be an office, right? So we have some struggling facility requirements, and this project would help us accomplish those objectives. So any questions on that?
Comments or questions? Go ahead.
I mean, to be honest, I was a little surprised to see this on the agenda tonight. I think we only had one discussion about this, and I feel like this was kind of brought up out of the blue. To me, I felt like we need a little more discussion before we could vote on selling the property.
Yeah, I don't think the intent was to vote this evening. I think this was the start of the public hearing. So all the discussions so far have been in closed session as we've been negotiating.
So we're not voting later tonight on this?
Normally, that you guys don't vote the same night as the public hearing, and yeah, so if you feel you need more time,
This will be June 20th, is that?
it's up to you all. I mean, the sooner the better for us, because we're also close to bringing to public hearing the purchase and sale agreement for that building. So it'd be nice to get the revenues to pay for that building kind of approved at the same time.
Among governing body members that we go forward with this.
Right, but I think I also requested like a cost analysis for either repairing the building or replacing what it is versus going this route, right? I mean, I haven't seen any other pros and cons to whether this is the only option. we
Either way, though, like, remember, the building, like, let's say you want that analysis. Let's go renovate the existing building.
Right.
You still need the money for that.
Right.
This development is to come up with the money to do whatever it is you want to do with the community development building. So regardless of whatever strategy you want to take, we need the money for that. So this is the plan to come up
Right.
with that money.
Like, how much more? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know that number. We don't have that number. I can't make a decision whether, okay, is that feasible enough to make that towards that building or not, you know?
You mean if that building will be feasible
To spend that much money, you know what I'm saying? Like, what is that number,
to renovate it?
renovate?
Yeah, so again, the building's going to cost $6 million. We're going to have an additional $7 million generated from this development. So I doubt the renovations are going to be $7 million. Yeah. But again, we can slow down on the building. The point is you're going to have to come up with the money somehow to either renovate their existing buildings or tear down. It's probably going to be a tear down, to be honest with you.
But that's what I'm saying.
and
My next question
reconstruction.
was, so you're assuming it's going to be a full tear down, rebuild?
For the existing Public Works
existing.
building, but I don't even know if you have the parking infrastructure there, if you're going to now move the development services, you wouldn't be able to accommodate the schools at that site as well, so it's not a good site for all that. Plus, you miss an opportunity for a commercial development there, which I think was a good goal for us to have, which was to have additional ongoing retail development there for Kent Village Square. Everyone's, on the west side, they complain that we focus a lot here on the downtown. We're also trying to do economic development, but we have to move Public Works out to be able to do it over there as well.
Okay, I mean, I'll still go back.
Comments?
Couple things. Just keep in mind where Public Works is now. Used to be the / fire department, police department that I think it's been there since, I think, the 1980s. There was a police department slash, no, that was the fire department previously, back in this, I think, like the original building.
Right.
So when we took a walk through there in 2021, it was
Yes.
awful. It was bad when it was the fire department and the police department. I know, because I was there
Yeah.
back in the 80s when it was the fire department and the police department. And my brother can even tell you, I was being a not firefighter, but being a police officer in that building, how bad it was. And he was also there when I was a volunteer fireman. And he's now retired. So that building has seen better days. The second question I have, if we didn't pursue selling this plot of land, what was the alternative to use this plot of land for? What was the city's alternative?
There's no alternative right now.
You would just sit there,
It would just sit there, yeah.
and birds would just come
Yes.
visit.
Yep.
And we would get nothing from it,
Yeah.
yeah. Councilmember Javed, you might want to take a run up to the Public Works building and just walk around, take a look at it.
Oh, I'm not arguing that it needs work. That's not my argument. I'm saying we need to put money in there. But I'm just saying, all right, how much money we need to spend? And is it worth selling a plot of land doing about 115 unit development just to buy that building? You know, that's my argument. We could spend the money, but I mean, if it's a full tear down, then that changes the whole story. I mean,
But again, we still need a facility solution, and you still need money for that. So I'm not arguing that if you want to evaluate other proposals, we can do that, but everything's going to have a cost. I mean, this building here cost us almost $17 million. That's like a starting point for you to see kind of what a new build looks like. Public Works buildings are going to be much more complex to develop with all the working bays and everything else than a city hall building. So you're going to be spending a lot of money there on a new build. That was the plan for why we wanted to acquire an existing facility and renovate it and keep it roughly in that same 2000s era as we built the other buildings, and so we can properly asset management kind of all the renovations that are needed for all those other buildings as well. So either way, like, you know, you may be right. There may be better options out there. You still need the money for those other options as well, and this is the area that makes sense to do that, to get that money.
well, the revenue from the other developments won't pocket, I mean, we can't use that for,
The revenues for the downtown development right now.
I mean, downtown, I know that's
Yeah.
focused on this building. I'm talking
No,
about-
no. But even then, like the downtown part of it, a very small part was focused on this building. There's still a lot more that's going to happen.
Right.
And that was focused on getting the tax rate down and pay raises for employees to stay competitive with the rest of the region. That was the goal there, not to fund other buildings. This development was always to fund City Hall and tax rate reductions and pay raises. At least that was the goal. And I mean, you guys can always adjust your goals, but that's when we were selling this to the public. We never mentioned that was going to pay for the community development building. Yeah.
I've said this multiple times before. I mean, we just have multiple residential projects in the works in the next couple of years, adding almost over 1,000 units in the next 5 years. I mean, to me, that seems kind of fast. You know?
Yeah, I mean, the region is still behind when it comes to housing, and more concerning is just with that weak housing supply, the prices are just exponentially high.
Yeah, I know the
And-
market.
We have overcrowding, because there's no
Yeah,
places
there's
to
no
rent.
places, and number two,
Louder.
It's the reason why we have overcrowding, because we don't have places to rent.
and not just that, you're losing now Gen Z. They're moving out of this region. The workforce is leaving, and this whole region is going to be a significant threat if we don't change that. You have to add housing stock and affordable housing stock to keep workers in this area.
All you gotta do is drive down 29 in Fairfax, city of Fairfax. And you see where there was Paul VI. That's all now, in a matter of since 2020, that's all now become townhouses, condos. I mean, that whole corridor has changed dramatically.
And then also, as a reminder, for state revenues for schools, we were seeing a slowdown in that, and that meant that the city now, we could have done a more robust tax rate reduction this year had we just seen the same types of increases in state revenue over the last few years. But we're starting to see a slowdown in that because of the demographic change of just less kids in our schools. So we actually do now need the more kids in our schools at this point. So the argument used to be don't add more residential units because you're just going to add more students and you're going to overcrowd the schools. We're starting to lose students, and that's just not our city. That's nationwide as the demographics change and as birth rates collapse. So you're competing for additional kids, And our state revenue, a big part of that's contingent on how many kids do we have in school and what's our population as well. So a growing population and a growing school population ensures that we get the additional state revenues as well.
Councilmember Amaya, do you have a follow-up? No. Okay. Vice Mayor Mensing, do you have any comments? No. Okay. Do you have a follow-up?
I guess, let me ask about, are you taking questions? or-
Yeah, just you
Oh,
can,
okay.
you can just go to the mic. Yeah.
Good afternoon. Happy to be here. My name is Justin Talkman.
Can you please speak directly into
Or
the,
just pull the microphone out.
yeah.
My name is Justin Tochterman. I'm the land acquisition manager for D.R. Horton in our Northern Virginia division. D.R. Horton is America's largest home builder. We've closed 90,000 homes in the last 12 months. And we have the capability to do every sort of home building, whether that's single-family detached, townhomes, 2/2s, 2/1s, multifamily. We also have arms for DHI commercial. So we look at commercial development, and pretty much we're your one-stop shop for anything related to residential or mixed-use development. Even though D.R. Horton is America's largest builder, we haven't had a large presence in Northern Virginia for many, many years, and that's partly why I'm talking to Laszlo and a lot of other folks around the counties. We're looking to grow throughout the region, and we're heavily invested in being good partners with both the public and private spheres. So, thank you.
Okay. Sir, I didn't catch your name.
Justin Tochterman.
I'm sorry, can you speak into the microphone?
Justin Tochterman.
How do you spell your last name?
Tochtermann.
Okay, thank you, sir. Are there any questions for Mr. Tochterman?
Yeah,
Did
I
say that
was,
correctly?
usually 202s are, condos for sale. So what brought you to the rental side?
In part, what Laszlo said is we saw a need in the market for interest rates have risen, and it's made homeownership less affordable for anybody entering the market. At the same time, build to rent, and that's what we call it. It's traditionally homes for sale built purposely for rent. We consider it a complementary product to what would be your new home entries for sale. It's really an affordability issue with new homes, and built to rent is a complementary product that allows people looking for more space to have more security in a place that they call home to have that home as a starter, where they have garages and street parking available. They have a full community with light amenities, something better than an apartment that fills that market need for working class families that need 3 and 4 bedrooms. So driven by market need, and in part, you mentioned there's a lot of new units coming online in your market and in Prince William County, which recently had its comp plan change. That part of it is it's a very saturated, the 2/2s for sale. So we wanted to be in a market segment that we believed in.
Okay.
Questions?
I just want to add also, sorry.
Really quick, in what other communities have you offered this type of housing?
Great question. So partly because we're a growing division. I mean, 3 years ago, we didn't really have very many active communities in Northern Virginia. So we're the largest home builder, but when I started 3 years ago, we had 1 or 2 active communities. So we are not currently building these, but I did bring with me the prototypes for 2/2s. We've built everything nationwide. So we're not building any current 2/2s in any market right now. But to give you an example of the scope of the projects that we're doing, we're currently self-developing. So that's D.R. Horton owning and developing the land ourselves. 1,500 lots out in Frederick County. So about 550 of those are in Stevens City. We have another 700 east of Winchester. And another 300 age-restricted. It's our Freedom community. That's for a lifestyle play of 55 and up folks. And within that 1,200 to 1,500 units, 95 of those are built-to-rent townhomes that we're building in Stevens City. You can look it up online. It's called Westwind, and it's performing very well. It's a very similar situation that there's a lack of that sort of housing option in that market, And we're doing that out there and executing it very well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other follow-up? You mentioned 2/1. I've not heard of that before. What is a 2/1?
Another good question. Part of it is just lingo of what they call it, but it is a 4-story attached structure that it's condominiumized. Instead of it being a 2-story condo over a 2-story condo, it's a condo flat over
The two-story.
a two. Exactly. Yeah.
It's a what?
A condo flat, so 1 unit over 2 units. So 2 units over 1.
So there's a total of 3 units?
Correct.
No,
Okay.
two.
Okay, thank you.
2 units, but 3 floors.
It's a 4-story structure, and within each structure, there is 3 units.
3 units, okay.
So
Okay.
I'd have to show you the floor plan. It's a little
Yeah,
confusing.
no, I get the picture. Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Just again, I want to remind everyone that, check up on the news as well. This is the first year Fairfax County has seen a decrease in population. And so that's coming, unfortunately, is depopulation, and that's a bad place to be for a region, and we have to change that.
Okay, wow. No other comments or questions from the governing body. Is there anyone who would like to make public comment? Yes, sir, please come to the microphone, state your name and address, limit yourself to 3 minutes.
Okay. Joel Christian, 120 Alpine. Has anybody thought about the roads from Manassas Drive and 28? It backs up almost up to the fire department. Going on down Manassas Drive from South Loman, it backs up to the maintenance department. And you adding how many townhomes? Average 2 to 3 adult driving. You got a mess. We already have a mess. At 4 o'clock, it backs up big time. So Stafford County makes the builders add money for the road system. Something to think about.
Yeah. Again, they are proffering cash here of about $1.9 million as well. What we decide to use it on, you can use it for transportation if you want. We're actually using it to fund the department that houses the transportation department, which has brought in millions of dollars in grants over the last few years and helped secure the Route 28 Phase 1 in improvements as well. So the backing up, the traffic is really caused by Route 28, and the city's been the lead actually in getting the 28.
Okay, I understand 28. What about from South Loman all the way up to the maintenance department
You're talking about on Manassas Drive?
on Manassas Drive?
Yeah.
That's only single.
Yeah, again,
People don't want to fight that every day.
yeah, but the bigger traffic, I drive that as well, up to Loudoun County plenty, because my daughter, so I have the same experience. It's 28, that's the bigger issue. It's not Manassas Drive.
Got a problem in Manassas Park about people renting rooms, a basement, you got 5, 6, 7 bedrooms in there. And that's all them extra cars. So let's not forget about that.
Thank you, sir. Yes.
Good evening. Mike Smith, 102 Colfax. Mr. Christian already made most of my points. Thank you. I was going to say the same thing about the additional housing, the number of additional housing, and as Mr. Councilman Javed mentioned, we haven't really heard a whole lot about this yet. How is this additional housing, how are these units going to affect things like our schools, which you did mention a little bit, our traffic, our water, our parking, as Mr. Christian mentioned? There, as the representative said earlier, these are 3 to 4 bedroom units. But if I understood correctly from the overview photo, it looked like there was only 2 parking spots per unit. That's not going to be enough. You have 4 adults, married, 8 adults plus living in each unit, and only 2 parking spots. It's not going to work. We already see this problem on the old side of town every day. So just some things to consider. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for those comments. So in terms of parking, they're required to park according to the ordinance of the city. That's an ongoing conversation. I think we need to look at the ordinance if residents are not satisfied with the ordinance. But the developer is certainly going to build towards what the legal requirements are for parking for units. That's their responsibility. Our responsibility from residents, the governing body, myself, is to discuss the ordinance itself. Is it sufficient? Do we need to add parking requirements or not, but we're not going to specifically discriminate against one development in particular, calling them to do more than what's in the ordinance. In terms of water, you brought up what the impact of water is. We have more capacity than the number of customers. So by adding additional customers, that not only adds tap fee revenues for capital infrastructure, about $1.5 million that's going to be brought into the water and sewer fund. It brings more customers to help then add more of a base every year towards paying for that water, sewer, paying for the UOSA. Because remember earlier in my budget presentation, I said the majority of our water and sewer costs are fixed. That means if you add more customers to that fixed cost, you're reducing the impact on each resident. So there's a positive impact on water and sewer. There's a positive impact on schools because our revenues mainly come from the state for schools, and those are determined by the student demographic and population. So the more people you add and the more students you add, the more money you get from the state for schools. We're seeing declines in state revenues for us, which means that taxpayers have to pick up that bill. We want to flip that and continue getting more money from the state as we were just a few years ago, so we can continue to fund the schools majority from the state and not impact taxpayers. So that's part of this strategy as well. In terms of roads, we recognize that's probably one of the hardest issues to tackle because the majority of that's not impacted by us, right? So Route 28, even though our city's been the lead in that, we've helped secure the funding for the Route 28 innovative intersections. We've been partnering with the county for the Godwin Drive bypass. The majority of that's not even in our city, but we've been fighting as a governing body and as a staff to work with the region, to work with the state, work with the federal government to try to come up with solutions for 28 for our residents, because that's the biggest impact to daily commuting. And not just that, we talked about the county, right? So while this seems like a large development for our city, the majority of traffic is created by all the county developments, and we don't have any way to stop what the county is doing, but we see the impact of our county, of what the county is doing to us. So we need to be able to be armed and take advantage of that and come up with the revenues to help us achieve our objectives here as well, not just let the county develop, still impact our traffic and get nothing out of it. So to us, we need to be part of that, unfortunately, to capture that revenue, but to invest smartly in what we're doing. And we hired a transportation program manager just a couple years ago. It was a very smart decision. We brought in millions of dollars now for transportation enhancements that we wouldn't have had they not done that. So we are tackling transportation. It's just that's impacted much more by the region than the other items we're talking about. So we're there's no perfect solution, and we talked about overcrowding as well. You got to add more housing supply. The housing works like a market, right? It's supply and demand. This region is short 100,000 housing units, right? So there's more people looking for housing than it is available. That's pushing up prices. That's pricing out younger people who are now leaving this region. That means corporations, companies are going to start leaving this region as well if they don't have a young, growing workforce. So it's a serious concern that we can't tackle as a city. Even our 108 development unit here does not tilt that needle at all, but we're at least doing our fair share, and we're encouraging the region to also step up and not let this region fall behind. We're getting beat right now by Dallas, by Atlanta, by other metropolitan areas are just smoking us right now, and we have to turn around as a region as well. We can only control our city, and we're doing our fair share to help improve that situation, at least for our city, and to take advantage of resolving the capital liabilities. Because we can say no to this project, right? There's a lot of issues we have here from transportation and all that. But if we have to now fund the community development building through current taxpayer dollars now, then your tax rates have to go up, or we have to cut something else, right? So there's just going to be impacts across the board if we don't figure out ways to deal with capital liabilities through development. And that's what our strategy has been. It's not to impact residents with those liabilities. We inherited a massive debt bubble that we had to deal with, right? That limits our ability to borrow. We can't borrow money until the 2030s because of that historical debt, which means if we have to pay for new capital, it's a pay-go, which is what we're doing. But for large projects like this, we can only do it through development. There's no other options for us to finance these projects. So we're limited in terms of our options, and there's no perfect solution for any of these. And I think it's the fairest critique is impacts on traffic, right? That is the fairest critique, I think, from anything brought up. But there's not much we can do about that because the majority of new traffic is coming from the county and cut-throughs, right? People cutting through Manassas Drive, cutting through Bloom's Quarry. That's just going to continue growing as the county continues to grow. So we can either add revenues, keep investing in transportation enhancements, keep taking the lead on Route 28, right? or we can continue to falter, and those are our options. So we're never presented with perfect options, but we have to do the best we can with what we have and pursue creative opportunities to mitigate impact on taxpayers and to continue the commitment to reduce that tax rate, because our goal is to get lower and get that tax rate so we're more competitive with our neighbors. But that can only happen through development, by adding more customers to pay for debt, right? Our debt is fixed right now. So again, more taxpayers paying towards that debt, towards a fixed cost, reduces your impact, the share that you're paying on that debt as well. So that's the approach here as well.
I think City Manager made a very good point when he said that Manassas Park is not the cause of the traffic problems, and we're not. It is Prince William County. Another thing to consider is the traffic problems that we see today are the result of decades of underfunding. The state has underfunded transportation, they've underfunded education, mental health. I mean, you could make a list as long as your arm of what the state has not funded sufficiently, but transportation is right up there. So, yeah. Thank you, Laszlo. Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to add that the tax rate reduction actually made a big difference in our evaluation of this project. It would have been a lot more difficult for D.R. Horton to justify the investment at a tax rate of 1.55%.
Okay.
As for parking, again, we want to be a good partner and be creative with solutions. We've looked at other projects, particularly when you get more into the multifamily sphere. The gentleman brought up a lot of street parking, and that's true. So this will be built at a minimum to the zoning ordinance. I think that's 2.4 parking units per residential unit. But if there's any way to utilize under capacity parking garages or be a part of a larger development that gives people the option for parking, that would be, you know, a part of the larger community holistically, we're happy to do that because we have the capability to engage in that. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Gentleman out there.
Yes.
Hi, Michael Cummings, 246 Manassas Drive. So my question is more towards the schools. So currently Manassas Park is a Title I, and with adding about 180 units with 3 to 4 bedrooms, we're looking on average between 100 to 500 students possibly coming into Manassas Park. So, this is just out of quick math, you know, with what we got. So my question would be more along the lines of how we would, I mean, I understand that, I'll be part of that solution, but how is that going to affect our Title I status, which we have quite a few teachers on Title I funding that support our schools doing very important jobs. Yeah, I'm definitely very interested to see how that's going to affect our community. Yes, granted, having more students could absolutely be a huge benefit, especially with the tax base. You know, what are we able to invest in? But I guess my question really is, what is the projected income average range that the proposed housing development is looking to bring, because that's going to directly affect our status and be able to work with the federal government and such.
Yeah, I can't speak to Title I. Right, I'd have to talk to Dr. Saunders about the impacts there. What I will say is that when we were looking at this, we added about 400 residential units over a 3-year period and saw a decrease in student population, because the math about adding residential units assumes that the rest of the demographic trends continue as they were. The opposite's happening. Birth rates are collapsing across the nation, right? So you're just seeing less kids added. So the number, you can add more and more housing units, and the number of students continue to decline, and that just doesn't make sense from a mathematical standpoint unless you look at every existing house is now creating less children than what occurred before. So that's the challenge. Is if we didn't even add those 400 units, I can't imagine how much the student population would have dipped as well. So the goal is to try to at least keep it slightly growing or flat, right? Right now, it's going down, and that's going to impact our state revenues. I can't speak to Title I, though. I'd have to talk to Dr. Saunders about what the formulas are for that. I only know what the LCI formula looks like, right, in terms of calculating state revenues for our city. And they really look at overall city wealth, not just income levels as well. So they look at housing value, other, commercial tax base. We continue to fall far behind the rest of the region in that, which is why we get much more support from the state than the other jurisdictions in Northern Virginia do. But I'll have to follow up with Dr. Saunders on Title I.
I think it's important to try to look at this holistically. We can't, the city cannot stop moving forward just based upon one small slice of an issue. We have to keep moving forward. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to make, yes, ma'am?
It's Martha Collier. I'm at 9700 LC Place. Could you put the slide back up of the property we're talking about? That, you just missed it. Right there. Where exactly is the property we're talking about right now?
This map would be more helpful. Actually, this one. So we're here right now, City Hall. If you cross the tracks,
Yeah.
heading back to
But
Blooms.
the piece of property is in the middle?
No, this is Digital Drive right here. So when you're driving home, you'll see a field of trees here right now.
Yep.
That's where it is. You turn left on Digital Drive and all this forest there.
The entire corner?
Yeah.
Is the property?
Correct. It's
I
these
was-
three parcels right here.
I was picturing,
But our property is this one.
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
That's the piece you're talking about.
Yes.
What happens if you don't sell it?
It just remains there.
Developed all around it and we sit there?
I don't even know if they would move forward with the development, to be honest with you. Yeah.
So it only makes sense that we sell it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree.
I mean, why would you not? That's all.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to make public comment? Okay, seeing no one and hearing no one, do we have a motion to close?
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on to 4A, Councilmember Hampton has an informational update on the Community Maintenance Working Group.
There should be. I sent it weeks ago.
No, I didn't get that out. No, I didn't get that. I didn't get it.
Oh,
I got the names and
no worries.
Email it to us? Maybe
Yeah,
we can-
and then we'll switcheroo.
Okay, let me get that. Yeah, number. Actually, can you email it to Kelly?
Yeah. Chances are it probably got lost. It didn't go through all the way through. That's happened to me at work. So bear with me 1 second. Of course, I don't have my glasses. Oh, here they are. Okay, Kelly, you should get it momentarily. All right, so we're gonna switch things around. We're gonna talk about, we're gonna give the certificates out, especially since we have one of our youngest volunteers here. And I have to say, he's been very amazing this evening. So on April 22nd, we, Yessie and I, and the other members of the Community Maintenance Working Group, and roughly, I think, 16 volunteers joined us at Polk Park, and many of the volunteers are here today. Including those volunteers were the young men and women of BSA Troop 1372. And for 2 hours, we not only cleaned Polk Park, but Polk Drive, and then many of the side streets, and working our way back through. And in that time, we collected everything from car parts, numerous car parts. I think Yessie found the footrest of a wheelchair, beer bottles about yay big, and I guess that's multiple occasions to drink a beer bottle that much, half full. A number of other things, the masks, plastic cutlery. We even found metal cutlery. What are some of the other strange things that we came across?
Close.
Clothes. Yeah.
Muffler.
Muffler, yeah.
kept looking, we could have found a whole car.
Yeah. So, you know, I thank the volunteers that came out because this is how Manassas Park used to be. Somewhere along the line, I guess, because, you know, people have moved, retired and such, whereas a community, we came together and we made a difference. So thank you. And also, we also recognize 2 of our residents who on their very own go out routinely and pick up all sorts of litter that's all throughout the streets. And those individuals are Mike Smith and Lori Meem. And in a few moments, we'll show some pictures of them getting the award, so thank you. So at this time, Yessie and I would like the folks that were here on April 22nd to come up, and we'll give you their certificates. And then, if possible, get a picture of us with, and Madam Mayor, you want to come down with us too? Get a picture with us as well? And we'll start off with Roman.
Do you want to go down and get a picture?
Oh, I couldn't hear what she said. Okay.
Spell your name, Roman. Here we go. And Roman, I think, was our youngest volunteer. Yeah, turn around so everybody can see you. Here you go.
Hold it.
Yessie, you want to get the picture with us? And this is the future of Manassas Park. And his mother. Roman's mom.
Thank you. As executive assistant.
Picture with us.
I love your T-shirt.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. That is a physical therapy.
Thank you. Lori? You can smile. And Lori will, actually, she's part of the community maintenance working group, and will be out on Saturday at Nancy, myself, Lori, and our other member will be with hopefully some other residents picking up trash at Williams Park. Yes, more volunteers.
Yes, call out.
Thank you. Let's see. Tyler? There you go.
This way?
Yeah.
Okay.
Make us all look short. Okay, let's see, who else do we have? Let me find the names. Mike, we'll find your name up here, but come on up. They do. They're very nice, but they do stick together. And so, Mike, even as...
That's good.
Yeah, we did. And Mike, do you want to tell the folks about some of the stuff that you collected that day? And the streets that you all hit?
We went, we started at Polk Park, made our way down to Manassas Drive, turned right on Manassas Drive, went up Cabell from the other direction, walked around the, what's the apartment, the townhouse complex over there?
Kirby and Mosby?
Yeah, Mosby Ridge 2, I think it was, and then made our way back to the park. So it was a good turnout. Really glad that so many members of the community were able to come out, and hope to see more at the next event.
Saturday.
Very productive. And Mike brought everybody donuts. too.
Yeah.
And that's on your certificate, so you can hear. And Mr. Doyle Christensen. That is right there.
Yeah, I'm right here. I'm always. I was Mike. I was Mike, man, we picked up trash left and right. Of course, there's residents arguing, oh, it wasn't us.
A lot of Modelo cans.
Thank you all very much. And for the scouts, we will work through the school board to make sure that you get your certificates. You can skip on to the next
Thank
page.
you, thank you again to everyone who participated in the cleanup. That was wonderful.
He just gave
Okay.
us a thumbs up.
I beg your pardon?
Roman just gave us a thumbs up.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Okay, so I won't take up too much time. Tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about where we've been with the Community Maintenance Working Group, what we're doing right now, and what our future state looks like. So back about a year ago, we presented our findings. We spent a year of coming up with some recommendations to the governing body, and out of those recommendations, they approved these 5 items. The litter collection programs, which we just talked about a few moments ago. Another one that we're having this Saturday at Blooms Park. I'm going to keep pushing that all night long. And then in September, we're going to have another one where we'll be meeting at Costello Park and hitting the streets all around it. All the information is up on the website. If you want more information, reach out to Yessie and I. We're easy to find, and we're easy to speak to. We're also working on a code education campaign. We'll be touching base back with the city manager once we have the first draft of our code education campaign, as well as talking about the future state of that. The home apartment decoration contest, we all know that. That is the Winter Lights Extravaganza and the Halloween Houses of Lights. In a little bit, we'll tell you about when when we'll have the information out on the website. And then something that we'll be working on in the next few months is a volunteer corps of people to come out and do snow removal and yard work for our residents who just physically can't do that anymore. That's kind of a throwback to Manassas Park days when I was younger, where people just did that without having to ask. But we're bringing that back. And then long-term, a informal community garden. Go to the next slide. So this is the progress of where we've been since 2021. And as you all can tell, I do like to use my infographics. It's a lot easier to read. 2021, we received approval. We launched our first Winter Lights Extravaganza, which is a throwback to the old days of Manassas Park where they had a Christmas light decoration. We just renamed it, rebranded it. 2022, we delivered the recommendations. We launched the sibling to the Winter Lights Extravaganza, the Halloween Houses of Lights contest. We continued the Winter Lights Extravaganza, and we also, at the very end of fiscal year 22, received approval for Keep the Park Beautiful, which is an affiliate of Keep America Beautiful. A little more to come on that. This year, we held our first citywide spring clean, which we thank you all again for helping us that almost 2 months ago. We received our Keep the America Beautiful training. We're also looking for volunteers to serve on Keep the Park Beautiful. So if you're interested, once again, reach out to Yessie and I. We're easy to find. We're going to have our first summer and fall cleanup. The summer one will be this coming Saturday. We got the code training, and then, of course, we're going to continue with the Halloween Houses of Lights and the Winter Light Extravaganza. So next calendar year, we're going to develop that volunteer corps program. We're going to expand the cleanup, so we're going to formalize Keep the Park Beautiful, and also continue with the house decoration contests. In 2025, all the above, plus we'll establish the informal community garden behind the rec center. And 2026 is everything above, but even more. Okay, can you? So we did a lessons. This is some pictures of April 22nd. You can see at the top the scout leaders, the scouts, some of the other residents, and the amount of trash that we picked up. And I also want to thank, we really do want to thank Public Works because they did come out and they collected the trash for us. That's the back of their truck, it was just amazing what we found. Also over there are the awards that we presented to Mike and to Lori for their dedicated efforts of picking up litter throughout the city for the past couple of years. And some of the highlights, as we mentioned, 20 volunteers. We're very thankful to the Boy Scout troop. If it wasn't for them, we would be very short on volunteers, not only for this, but for the Halloween Houses of Light and the Winter Light Extravaganza. We actually had residents tell us thank you. They stuck their heads out the window and, told us Happy Earth Day and thanked us. So it was appreciated. And the schools did some things kind of in tandem with the citywide spring clean. We tried to reach out to businesses to try to get them to clean up their part, clean around their area and be part of it. Didn't work so well, but that's okay. We got next year. We'll bring them in next year. And once again, Public Works, thank you. So now if we just move on to the next slide. This Saturday, we're going to be cleaning up Blooms Park. Lori and I did a walk around on Memorial Day, and we're going to have basically three groups. One that could do the small trail, one that'll do the large trail. When we did it, it took us an hour and 45 minutes to do it. So, and then folks to do the parking lot and further out to Manassas Drive. And then in September, we're going to be doing a cleanup at Costello Park. And I'd also like to thank Parks and Recreation for helping us with preparing for Tuesday. Also to Sarah for helping us with the promotion. And then you go to the last slide. So these are the upcoming events, the Halloween Houses Lights and the Winter Light Extravaganza. We'll have everything up on the website on August 1. We're going to reach back out to the Scouts, ask them to be the judges. And as with our new tradition, the winner of the Halloween House of Lights will have a place of honor at the trunk or treat. And last year's winner of the Winter Light Extravaganza will be the Grand Marshal for this year's parade. And this year's winner will be the Grand Marshal for the 2024 parade. So that's the only update that we have.
Wonderful.
Any questions?
Thank you to everyone who's volunteering on the working group.
Thank you. Oh, and also, what I forgot to mention is that through Yvette, we put in for some grants through Keep America Beautiful. We'll find out later this month if the city's been awarded those grants, and she's also, with our support, putting in for other grants as well.
Yeah. Any comments or questions for Councilmember Hampton?
No.
No, looks great, thank you.
Yeah. No, that's wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. No recognitions. Moving on to consent agenda. Consent agenda consists of approval of the minutes of May 16th, 2023, approval of the appointment of Mr. Ron Gill to the Northern Virginia Community College Board of Directors, recommendation to the Prince William County Circuit Court for the appointment of Mr. Michael Becketts to the Board of Zoning Appeals, and approval by the governing body to write off $571,982.73 in delinquent personal property accounts from tax years 2015, 2016, and 2017. Do we have a motion?
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, next we have appointment to the Manassas Park School Board for a 3-year term. Mr. Michael James Cummings was our applicant. Do we have a motion?
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cummings. We appreciate that you made application, and good luck. Okay. Okay, moving on to 9A, agreement for on-call engineering services. And that would be Calvin. Good evening, Calvin.
Good evening, Mayor Rischel, members of council. I'm Calvin Odell, the Director of Community Development. Last governing body meeting, I brought before you 2 firms that had responded as a result of our RFP, request for proposals for on-call engineering services. That was AdTech Engineering and Christopher Consultants, which has since become IMEG. I told you that we would be bringing other firms back once we had reviewed their financials and finished our negotiation process with them. So tonight, we're here to recommend for additional agreements, additional on-call engineering services agreements with the city, Bowman Consulting, who the city has worked with for many, many years as a result of our last RFP for on-call engineering services, Volkert, a company that we have not worked with in my tenure here at the city, and then Pannoni Associates, Those three firms were responsive and responsible to the RFP. Their price list were deemed competitive, and they fill, Volkert especially fills a gap in our transportation wish list. And the other firms, Bowman and Pannoni, were in our top three scorers. So we're recommending that we enter into agreements with all three of these firms. And I did want to mention that we are making the statement in the staff recommendation that these are subject to further review by the city attorney, and that is because the insurance certificate issues have been quite complicated. Minor requests for, changes to how certain wording is in the agreement regarding the insurance certificates, but Dean is working with and will be working with these firms on getting that language squared away.
Okay, thank you, Calvin. Good to see there'll be some competition. Comments or questions from the governing body? Okay. If there are no comments or questions, the recommended motion is that the governing body approve and authorize the city manager to sign agreements with Bowman Consulting Group Limited, Volkert, Inc., and Pannoni Associates, Inc., for on-call engineering services as presented and subject to final city attorney review.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Calvin. Okay, 9B, authorize concrete work on north side of Connor Drive.
Good evening again. So Connor Drive is under construction, the extension of Connor Drive. We're getting to the phase of the project where the contractor will be doing the full depth repair work on existing Connor Drive. And in that, there are some sections of curb and gutter that were dramatically depressed, creating some flooding areas along the existing side of Connor Drive next to the existing townhomes. And it's very apparent when you walk the site. I think you guys have some pictures in your packet, but there are areas where there's substantial sediment just detained up against the edge of the street. If the contractor goes ahead and does all the full depth pavement work and resurfaces to the edge of those curbs, you're not going to solve that problem. You're simply going to have pavement that's either level with them and the problem will still exist, or you're going to have pavement that's slightly higher than the gutter pan and you're just going to get that same sediment in the gutter. So the contractor had recommended that we come out and walk the site with them and see if we didn't want to go ahead and repair some of those areas while we were at it. In our walk, we noticed there's quite a few other concrete issues out there, sections of curb that are severely broken off. And one of the things that we really don't like is the fact that there are some intersections there that have absolutely no pedestrian depression at all. There's 6-inch curb and gutter all the way around the radius, which means that there's really no accessibility, no way to continue the sidewalk or even consider the sidewalk accessible in those areas. So we saw those as some pretty big issues that we would want to go ahead and address. Now, normally, we would probably before this time of year, bring a recommendation for lots of concrete work under the Additional Streets Projects CIP line. Unfortunately, we don't have an active contract with an on-call concrete contractor, so this is actually quite timely for us because right as the contractor wants to do work on Connor Drive, we've identified some pretty significant deficiencies, and those ADA deficiencies especially would always be at the top of our list for correction. So the total, there was an itemized list I believe you were provided with that shows the sort of separated out by type of improvement. But really, all of these improvements will go to make sure that there are no more trip hazards, that we have ADA compliant sidewalks on both sides of this project, and that we don't have any additional, or that we don't continue the ponding situation on the existing side of the road. So staff recommendation is just that we go ahead and use that Additional Streets Projects money that we would normally use for concrete repairs, but focus those repairs on this Connor Drive area so that when this project is done, both sides of the street are improved, and that the residents along that side have an ADA compliant path on which to walk.
Okay. Thank you, Calvin. Since ADA enhancements have become pretty routine, how was it that that particular was overlooked?
I honestly, as many times as I've been out to Connor Drive, I never noticed that there was essentially two entrances there that had straight 6-inch curb and gutter radius.
Yeah.
I don't know if it just doesn't, you're not used to seeing it, you're not used to looking for it. The very first thing I noticed was that the existing ADA ramps didn't have any detectable warning surface at all. I'm used to looking for that, seeing the exposed aggregate detectable warning surface and saying, well, that really should be upgraded. But it never even occurred to me until I went out and took this walk that there weren't even depressed ADA ramps on some of those 6-inch, curb and gutter radiuses. And you get out there and you're looking for it, and you're like, oh yeah, well there it is. How do you miss that? I really don't have an answer to that, as that
No,
no
that's
one had
okay.
ever complained about it. But certainly those types of complaints, when they do come, we would act quickly to address them. And now that the contractors brought it to our attention, it certainly will make for better enhancements with this project.
Yeah, thank you. Comments or questions? Comments or questions? Comments or questions? Okay, just be sure. Okay. With no further comments or questions, the motion is that the governing body approve and authorize the city manager to sign a change order for the Connor Drive project to authorize A&M Concrete to perform concrete work on the north side of Connor Drive in an amount not to exceed $76,303.83 to be charged to the additional street projects line item as presented and subject to final city attorney review.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you, Calvin.
Thank you.
Okay, 9C, FY24 proposed holiday calendar.
Okay. Good evening again. Is this not working? Okay. I have the Excel file here in case you guys want to make any modifications. Just for background, I always rely on Loudoun County and Falls Church to kind of guide what they're doing. We weren't able to find Falls Churches this year for some reason, but Loudoun County we did find. This is exactly consistent with them, with the one exception. I did add this day before Independence Day simply because it was on a Tuesday this year, so I felt it would be nice for our employees to give them that Monday as well. That's the only add-on. So my plan has always been, or my recommendation has always been to look at the region, we'll look at what they're offering and try to be competitive with that at least. If we can't necessarily be competitive with pay, at least do other benefits that would help. And that would be, that's the reason why I added that Monday, July 3rd. But if any modifications you want to make, I have the Excel file up here as well.
Looks good. Any modifications, comments?
Yeah, I have one.
Go ahead.
Is Parks and Recs open any of those days?
The community center?
Yeah.
The community center, Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're closed on city holidays but open on the weekends, right? Yeah.
They'll be closed on July 4th, and they will be closing early on July 1st because of fireworks.
Can you say that again?
Yeah, so they're closing early July 1st for the fireworks, but they will be closed for the holidays.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And including the water park. Well, where I'm getting at is if anybody works during those
Yeah.
holidays, do they get paid?
The water park stays open. Yeah.
So the lifeguards, and they get paid a time and a half if any of those?
On holidays, no.
Okay. Why is that? Usually, when they work on holidays, there's a different pay rate.
Well, it is definitely for our police and firefighters. So the holiday schedule does impact overtime for police and firefighters. So
But not
that would be the added cost of doing the additional holiday would be that overtime.
And
Not like the part-time or full-time.
Now, a million years ago, when I worked for Parks and Rec, and I worked all the holidays, we get overtime, but we're also seasonal.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. All right, thank you.
Okay. No further questions? Okay. The recommended motion is that the governing body approve a resolution adopting the city's FY24 holiday calendar as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Proposed meeting calendar.
Okay. I'll go over this one from July through December, then I'll move over to the tab of January through June for next year. So you can ignore May and June here, but this is the file if we want to make any modifications. And again, you're not voting on this tonight. You have this month to really edit this, and then you would actually vote on it at the first meeting of the fiscal year, which is always the third Tuesday of July. So that you can see highlighted here in red. So again, red is the regularly scheduled meetings. Blue just signifies weekends, and then you'll see the green color. Hopefully that's clearer than the purple I used last year for the budget meetings. But you'll see we'll start with July 18th. That's I want to say by code or charter that we meet on that first Thursday third Tuesday of July. We meet to officially ratify the rest of the meeting schedule. You'll see I have August 29th as the next meeting. This gives you all roughly kind of a 6-week recess for the summer. Most jurisdictions, governing bodies have a recess, but for staff, it gives us a 4-week break on developing packets, which is a lot of work to develop the agenda packet. So it does allow for a good break for us, a full month essentially of not having to work on packets for the governing body
I
meeting.
think it's more important that we give staff that break.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, though, we may, if something comes up, we'll certainly notify you all if we do have to meet in earlier in August for any special meetings or any emergency votes, like when emergencies popped up, we may have to have a special meeting. That's true throughout the year, but it's always especially around this area since we always have that 4-week, 5-week gap in meetings. Then we pick up, we don't do the first Tuesday of September every year because it's the day after Labor Day. So for people who are traveling, coming back, sometimes it's difficult to make that meeting. So for September, we always usually do the second and third Tuesday. October is normal, first and third Tuesday of the month. And then November is very tricky this year because we got the elections on that first Tuesday. So historically, we've always met the day after the election, so Wednesday. That's the only time we really meet on Wednesday. So that's for your consideration if you want to keep that tradition or if you want to modify it. The reason why the second meeting is on the second Tuesday, not the third, is the third Tuesday happens to fall on Thanksgiving week. So many people will be traveling that week. And then the following week, we're not developing the packet on the week of Thanksgiving as well. So that's why those last 2 weeks aren't really options for normal agenda meetings. So that's why we recommend the second Tuesday of the month. And then December is normal, the first Tuesday and third Tuesday. The real question here, and we had a discussion about this last year, is do you want to have this meeting here on the third Tuesday, the week of, some people start traveling for Christmas. Christmas is the following week. But that could be a consideration, or do you want to hold it on the 12th instead? That's just a consideration. I try to keep it as much as possible first and third, but that's really for you all to decide. So before I move on from January through June, are there any questions about these months or any discussions you want to have, edits you want to make on these months?
Comments?
I think we should move December to the 12th.
I agree.
12th.
Instead of the 19th.
I'm sorry you didn't have your,
Move December to the 12th instead of the 19th?
So the week before, not the week of Christmas.
Yeah.
I have no preference. Well,
yeah,
that's fine.
no preference.
Okay, so I'll just move it to the 12th then, and we'll do that. Give me 1 second here.
Any other comments? Okay.
Okay, all right, let me move over to January through June. Again, you can ignore July and August here. Okay, there you can see. Okay, so for January, we never meet the first Tuesday because that's the day after New Year's. So January is the second Tuesday and the third. February is normal, first and third. March normal, first and third. April normal-ish in terms of first and third meeting. First and third Tuesdays of the month we have regular meetings, but then you can see all the greens start to pop up with all the budget meetings that we're going to have in April. We're usually one in May. This is the date here that we usually vote on the school budget resolution and any advertisement that we have to do. And then any budget meetings these really in June are as needed, right? If you're having contentious budget, there's a lot of things you guys need to deliberate. These meetings are set aside, and then that we always highlight the last day of June as kind of the drop dead date to vote on a budget. Whatever deal you're going to come up with. The state's kind of going through that. They have been the last couple of years where it really goes down to the wire for them for for adopting their budget. So we always put these as placeholders. They're not necessarily needed in June, but it's there if you guys do need it.
Laszlo, can I speak up on this?
Sure.
Okay, so you can't just have a placeholder for a meeting, okay, because you still have the advertisement requirements. The purpose of this is to make sure that we don't have to advertise for special meetings. So my recommendation is all these days are regularly scheduled meetings. If you don't need them, then you just go ahead and put something on the website saying you don't need the meeting. But go ahead and make these regularly scheduled meetings, because placeholders don't work as far as the Freedom of Information Act is concerned.
Yeah, we do put them on the calendar as meetings. We call them special meetings, though, the green one. You're saying we should just change it from
They're
special
not
meetings to regular?
meetings. They're not special.
Okay.
This is the meeting schedule for the year. So everything on here would be a regularly scheduled meeting.
Okay, so just
that you would designate them specifically for budget purposes. And if you don't need a meeting, then you just don't call the meeting, and you just put something on the website saying the meeting's been canceled.
Okay, so we'll call these regular meetings instead of special meetings.
Right.
But you'll still put the word budget on the meetings that we decide?
Yeah, they're really intended for
We'll be able to distinguish ourselves?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, and we always do the budget calendar as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But putting them as regularly scheduled meetings, though, remember we had some confusion earlier this year because we had some of these meetings that were scheduled or designated for budgets, and there was confusion because everyone thought they weren't regularly scheduled meetings, but they were. So you can actually put other stuff on there. It's just that you're attending them right now to be for budget purposes only.
Yeah.
Okay. Do I need to change the colors, Dean, from green to red, or is that green okay?
No, you don't have to do that.
Okay, good.
You can just
It's
say
still
green
wording
is
that you have to
intended for
change.
budget.
I'll change the wording, yeah. Okay.
Just that calling them special meetings here and saying placeholders, that doesn't really do us any good at all as far as advertisement goes.
Okay, so these are regular meetings. Likely the June ones, again, we'll just have to announce whether you're not going to do these then, the 11th, 25th, and 30th, and we'll put it on the calendar that those meetings are not needed.
Okay. And we vote in July?
Yeah, you vote in July. Yeah, so any edits you want to make to January through June?
Any other comments or questions? Looking good.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Okay, if we're done with that one, let's move on to 9F, which is legal services for development deals. I think that's Dean, right? Yeah.
Yes, that is me. So this one is, there was some confusion about what this is for, but you remember when when you approved the purchase and sale agreement for the the property over on Route 28, and then we had the component where they were going to be, they weren't going to have to start paying for 5 years, and then if they leased out certain property over at the phase 1 of the city center, then they would have a certain amount of that offset. Well, that essentially makes the city a bank for purposes of that sale. So I wasn't comfortable. I don't have legal finance background, so I'm not comfortable doing that myself. We reached out to a couple firms to see what they would be able to do. The one we have before you here is with Nova Business Law Group. They used to represent the city for litigation purposes until Doug Plocky left, but they are essentially their business model is they provide legal services to small businesses as kind of a in-house counsel, and so they have the capability of doing what we need them to do. And their rates came in considerably less than the rates we got with the other firms. So the recommendation is we go ahead and approve this and authorize the city manager to sign this engagement agreement. And then that way we'd have another firm kind of on standby for certain needs.
Yeah. Thank you, Dean. I have a question on page 3 of the document, conflict of interest. It says, to allow the firm to represent you and its other clients, we request your limited waiver of certain actual or potential conflicts of interest. What does that involve? Will there have a firewall? What constitutes the firewall?
Yeah, so if a waiver appears, then they will have to notify us. We're not just giving some blanket for every every other client out there. This is just noticing them, notifying us that there may be conflicts that occur. And if that happens, you are going to have to make a decision whether or not you want to sign or approve a conflict waiver, in which case they would put a wall up between the attorneys, or if you want to go and get other representation. So you're not obligated to use them if that comes up. This is just notifying you that this could happen.
Okay, so it's incident by incident. Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, I don't see any comments or questions, Dean. We do have a recommended motion here that the governing body approve and authorize the city manager to sign a representation agreement with Nova Business Law Group LLC for legal representation on general legal matters as presented and subject to final city attorney review.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Moving on to our final item, which is DSS Attorney Engagement Agreement.
And I'll take that one as well.
Okay.
Martin Krim has represented DSS for many years, and they're really happy with his services. Martin has changed firms, though, and because he's with the new firm, there's a new engagement agreement that needs to be approved for him to continue representing the city, the DSS, I'm sorry. The prices he's quoting here, or they're quoting here, are the same, so nothing's changing there. Martin will still be the point person. There will be different attorneys, of course, within the firm that will back him up, and I'm going to ask that they change this slightly to show who the other attorneys would be. But you'll notice they're charging the same amount for what they call shareholders here, which would be, most firms call them partners. The of counsel is usually more seasoned than an associate, but they're charging the same amount for of counsel, associates, and partners, which is a pretty good deal. $285, you can just compare that to the one we just had for the other firm, and you can see we're getting a pretty good deal with the $285 an hour. And I'm fairly confident that DSS would like to continue with this, because Randy was in emails today back and forth where she said they're very happy with his services. Okay. So the recommendation, I'll wait and see. I'll read the recommended motion if there's no questions.
Thank you. I was just going to mention this document did not come with a recommended motion, so thank you. Comments or questions? Apparently no comments or questions. Dean, do you want to go ahead and read the recommended motion?
Sure. The recommended motion would be that the governing body approve and authorize the city manager to sign the client engagement agreement with Sands Anderson PC for legal representation of the Department of Social Services as presented and subject to final city attorney review.
Moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you, Dean. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to our second public comment time. Is there anyone who would like to make public comment? Okay, seeing no one. Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
We forgot to thank the city staff for the Friday before Memorial Day for the Memorial Day flag lowering. We heard from the veterans they were very pleased and honored by it. So thank you to the staff.
Yeah, thank you. Any other comments? Questions? Okay. Seeing no one and hearing no one, we'll move on to city manager report.
Just to echo Councilmember Hampton, just to thank everyone who was involved with Memorial Day and who came out. Sorry I couldn't make it. I was at a business recruitment week there, but I wish I could have been there. And just want to remind everyone we do have the Veterans Dinner Thursday night at the Rec Center. Then we have the Pride flags raising this Friday the 9th at 7 p.m. here at the plaza, and then
Juneteenth is coming up also?
Yes, on June 16th, is that correct? Yeah. Okay. What time is that one?
Yeah.
7 o'clock as well? Yeah, so if everyone could just remember to join us for all those events.
Okay,
Thanks.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Okay, there is no closed session. Is there anything else for the good of the city? Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries.